Hey everyone, thank you all for coming out. It's really awesome to see the DePIN community growing, and thank you especially to Rylan and Jing and Larry and the rest of the IoTeX team who have done an awesome job building the community and hosting these events over the past handful of years. So I am the founding partner of Escape Velocity Ventures. We're a venture firm that's been around for almost 2 years now, focused exclusively on DePIN, and our investors in IoTeX and many of the other companies that you guys are hearing about today. And I'm going to talk to y'all today. Change it up a little bit from sort of the theory and the practice of DePIN over the past couple of years and share some ideas on, from where we sit, having a broad perspective across the DePIN space, things that are highly needed for the space, and a couple of ideas that we think can sort of change the landscape for DePIN as a whole. So who we are, I wanted to put up here a brief snapshot of our portfolio to sort of show the types of different companies that we're investing in. The breadth with which DePIN has grown over the past year and a half has been super impressive, and we've been really lucky to be at the forefront of some of these markets and very different types of like products and services that they're providing. On top of running a venture firm, we run one of the leading DePIN podcasts in the space. We run an analytics site, which is sort of like DeFi Llama for DePIN, where you can track on-chain revenue and dilution and other statistics on how these networks are doing. And we run an annual conference for founders and investors called DePIN Summit. So what are the Millennium Prize problems? For any of you that aren't familiar with them, they are these 7 unsolved problems in mathematics that came out about almost 20 years ago now that represent foundational breakthroughs in some of the most technical fields of our time. So fluid dynamics, quantum field theory, number theory. These, they have $1 million bounty each that was set in 2004, I think, and only one of them has been solved. So these are highly ambitious problems in mathematics that represent sort of foundational breakthroughs in their fields. And today, I'm going to present what I call the DePIN Dragon Prize problems. We're in the year of the dragon, and so here's 7 problems, 7 opportunities that we think have the opportunity or the potential to redefine sort of how DePIN grows as an entire space. Okay, the first one, cross-chain DePIN index. Many of you, I think, I saw the show of hands before. Many of you own DePIN tokens. You probably don't have a representative sort of exposure to the space. You may have FOMO about missing out on certain exposures. Or find yourself bridging chains to buy whatever DePIN tokens you want to buy. This is a really acute problem for especially larger investors and pools of capital in the space who want to buy DePIN tokens en masse. They want to have sort of an index exposure to the space, but there's no easy way to do it unless you are an expert at managing private keys on a bunch of different chains, unless you're willing to pay a venture fund or a hedge fund really expensive fees to have that exposure for you. And so, this idea isn't new. It's been pretty successful in DeFi with this protocol called Index that at its peak had 9 or 10 figures of TVL. The way I would go about building this is basically you need to have some ability to have cross-chain liquidity across DePIN tokens. And so you could design smart contracts for this, launch liquidity mining to incentivize the initial depositors in your pool, and integrate with both centralized and decentralized exchanges to drive volume to it and users. The reason why this hasn't been done yet, and I think would be really successful if it already had been done, is that the state of cross-chain infrastructures, it needs a lot of work today. There are a couple of bridge protocols that seems like finally starting to break into the mainstream, but they have very low liquidity. A lot of them don't support multiple virtual machines, and so this is sort of the key problem to solve is how do you create an on-chain structure that is censorship resistant, that can transact across DePIN tokens on multiple different chains, and rebalance among them without getting torn apart by MEV bots. Next idea, modular multi-miners. Today, a year ago, let's say, there was probably 4 or 5 pieces of DePIN hardware that consumers could buy. Today, I would say there's maybe 20 or I don't know, 30 or 50. We think in a year or two there will be hundreds of different DePIN consumer projects that folks can buy. And so a lot of these devices come down to the same components, really. You have like some sort of wireless chips, whether it's Wi-Fi or 5G or Bluetooth or whatever. You have sensors or cameras or microphones, like some sort of thing to tell the device what's happening in the real world. And you have a secure element so you can do secure transactions on it. We see a lot of the different DePIN projects that are launching as having like very overlapping hardware sets. Like a lot of these hardwares are very similar, but projects are launching their own brands, their own hardware supply chains. These are highly sort of capital and labor intensive activities. We haven't seen a single project go and say, hey, we're going to build like the modular DePIN miner where you're going to be able to slot in different chips if you want to mine for a a GNSS network or for a LoRa network or a 5G network or for different compute networks, or you want a map, like whatever it is. And so this is clearly like you're building for the power users, but I think it can be highly successful. And when you think about the space as a whole, it can drive a lot of efficiency by the folks who are most passionate about DePIN today are like very stretched across many projects, and you see them like buying a bunch of different hardware. If you can tap into DePIN's most passionate supporters and give them a single sort of platform to help contribute to networks, it can be really successful. And I think of this like eigenlayer, it's sort of like shared security among different DePIN protocols. Next up, miner financing. There's this huge gap in DePIN around how do you actually finance the growth of these businesses. Mustafa in the prior talk chatted about like how to reduce and induce volatility to drive the right types of speculators into financing your protocol. I think that this is really critical for the early stages of DePIN networks. In order to compete at scale, though, like taking DY as an example, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile have like over $200 billion of debt that they pay like 4% on, like literally they're government borrowers effectively. It's gonna be really, really hard to compete against that if DePIN doesn't have some sort of credit markets that we can tap into. And so the like crypto non-DePIN equivalent of this is NYDIG, which has been one of the biggest Bitcoin ecosystem lenders. They have a massive, I think like $10 or $15 billion Bitcoin lending book at this point. And they were really critical to helping the Bitcoin ecosystem grow, helping miners scale, and they have a lot of like adjacent businesses they were able to build around that. And so we think this, whether it looks like an Affirm type of buy now, pay later type of product, or whether it looks like something more institutional where you're like giving out small business loans to folks that want to make mining a professional business, we think that this finding credit capital, unlocking it, and giving it to DePIN miners is a $10 billion opportunity. The hard part here is, of course, like lending businesses, it's easy to give away money, it's hard to get it back. You have to be very careful about managing cyclicality, both in crypto markets, managing underwriting, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart, but we think a huge opportunity. The next DePIN, the Millennium problem, is proof of location. The equivalent to think about here is like DEX aggregators in the DeFi space. If you're trading on a DEX, trading across multiple DEXs at once is, by definition, more useful than trading only on one DEX. You get to aggregate liquidity. The DePIN version of this, or the lowest hanging fruit in my opinion, is proof of location. If you want to locate something in the world and you want to track it, using one DePIN network for that, and there are a couple that are offering services like these, is helpful. But using all DePIN networks for that and aggregating across them is 10 times more useful. And so I think there's a big opportunity to create a like unified proof of location API where if I have a device with a sensor on it, it may have a LoRa sensor on it, and I'm going to tap into the Helium LoRa API. If it has 5G, I may tap into something else. If I have GPS chips, I may tap into some other type of positioning system. The like secret sauce here is that positioning is actually not as simple. It's not a commodity. It's not like I want to know where I am right now. There's different levels of precision. There's different levels of latency. Like there are a lot of different types of services you can offer to create a lot of margin for a business that offers this kind of like modular proof of location service. So the hard parts about it obviously are you have to manage relationships with DAOs in order to like pay out and to close the loop between getting the location information from these DAOs and the customer. And so in DeFi, I don't know, you guys may have seen like Gauntlet, one of the biggest contributors to Aave, dropped off the protocol this week. We see managing bureaucracy with DAOs as like a very hard business development problem. So that's the main thing to solve there. Second to last one. There's a massive opportunity around abstracting away APIs from traditional infrastructure. A lot of the traditional infrastructure companies like energy, utilities, telcos, they're all realizing like they're dumb pipes now. Nobody cares about or has loyalty to their energy provider or utility bill. And so they're launching APIs to try to monetize like their 5G infrastructure or their next gen energy infrastructure. It's not really going very well for them. Like, it's hard to build an API business. You have to build it into the culture of the company, and these companies are very much not that. There is a huge opportunity to aggregate all of these and create like a single, unified, very clean API where DePIN folks, engineers, crypto people can go and read and write from like these APIs in the real world. There's a lot of hard work to do around like SLAs, around managing these APIs as a full-time job. You can think about like Plaid has probably tens of thousands of engineers managing bank APIs. This is probably a similar scale challenge, if not bigger. but it can be highly powerful, I think, to be this bridge between an emerging set of APIs where incumbents are really incentivized because they have no other choice to like offer and open up their platforms, and an ecosystem of developers that are looking to like integrate more on-chain solutions into the capabilities that these APIs offer. So, for example, you could imagine adding cell phone subscribers or doing some interacting with cell phone towers near you in some way using telco APIs. You can imagine like powering down your house or having some energy efficiency savings using your utility APIs or other projects like that. Next one, DePIN search funds. This is a less technically ambitious one, but I think actually can have an even bigger impact on the space than what you might imagine. DePIN businesses are, I think over time the market will come to see them like franchises, like local franchises where you have a lot of the local value in, except you're not taking a huge cut of economics out of them. This is a very understandable business model to like business people, MBAs. There's this whole trend around MBAs wanting to be entrepreneurs, and they get search funds, and so they basically go raise capital to buy out a business, and they like buy themselves a job in effect, and try to run a small business. There's literally no reason for an MBA today to do a traditional search fund and buy out like a lawn mowing business or whatever when there's opportunities in DePIN. It's just massively more upside. The tools are all there today. There's just this big communication gap between finding those people, getting them with the right technical people, with the right opportunities, and they raise capital for themselves. So I think it's mainly about like just articulating the opportunity in a way that creates a funnel. And if you do this, we think you can imagine launching like Uber competitors, DoorDash competitors, Airbnb competitors. Like you get local entrepreneurs from those communities, give them the tools to build a subnet on top of many DePIN networks that are working on these problems. And you enable a whole new sort of cohort of entrepreneurs to jump into DePIN that hasn't been able to historically. The hard parts about this, MBAs, I've spent a lot of time with them. They don't care about crypto except when prices are up, so now is a good time. Probably you couldn't have done this a year ago. And there's a lot of, working with crypto projects is a very holistic, building a crypto network is a very holistic thing to do, and they often will need a lot of technical support. The last Millennium challenge is DePIN governance DAOs. These have been, different types of governance DAOs have been huge in DeFi, both investing, sort of like incubating, rewarding retroactively like public service or public goods. And these haven't really broken out into DePIN yet, I think because the community is like more disparate. We're on a lot of different chains, but I would like to see a lot more of this. There's some stuff going on that if you catch me later, I can tell you about. But basically, like imagine Nouns DAO was this project on Ethereum where every one day they would mint one NFT, they'd have an auction for it. The ETH from the auction goes into a treasury, and Nouns holders would vote on sort of like what what grants they would give or what events they would throw and different types of things for the Nouns and Ethereum communities. I think the DePIN community is growing massively, and there's this huge opportunity to create a more global on-chain native community around the space, around allocating, creating new ideas, and deploying capital. And so something that, especially as DePIN projects themselves have on-chain treasuries with a lot of capital in them, and as more people jump into the space, these will be a really interesting design space to expand the aperture of like the types of people that are into DePIN today. And so yeah, that's the end of my talk. I hope if anyone's interested in building any of these, please find me after.